welcome everybody.
Welcome!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Good Grognards. I'm Thin Gibson. Who are you?
And I'm Derek White, the Geek Preacher. Glad to have you with us tonight.
All right. So, looks like we've got some folks filtering in here. We're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. We've got quite a few things to talk about on our show tonight, and we're gonna hit all of them. The first thing, as we always do, is we're gonna talk about Grognards Doing Good, and boy, we've got a list this week. There's been quite a bit of charity work going on in the past week. There's still some really cool events that are upcoming. So to kick things off, first thing to talk about. If you are in the D&D 5e community, then you more than likely heard about D&D Live this past weekend. This was the official summer event put on by Wizards of the Coast this year in coordination with G4, who's making a comeback. Who knew? And they all of their games individually raised money for different charities over the course of 2 days. And altogether, last estimate that I saw, they'd raised about $17,000 for 4 different charities. So they raised money for Connor's Cure, which is specifically a foundation for Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. This apparently is the WWE charity. I think it was actually started by Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, but specifically in honor of one of their fans. And then Extra Life, who we've talked about several times on here already, raising money for Children's Miracle Network, and then Alice's Kids. And this is a really cool charity. I didn't know anything about this until I started researching this for this segment. Alice's Kids is a unique charity where they will pay for those one-time purchases for families in need. So if a teacher or a social worker or I think there's a few other criteria, recognizes that there is a family that is in need of like a one-time big purchase that's just hard for them to meet. Normal nonprofits don't have basically a petty cash box. So Alice's Kids takes care of that. So it could be anything. It's really interesting to see some of the things that they've paid out for, whether it's like, rent for the month, or it's kid needs a baseball glove for his little league game. It could be anything. It's kind of cool. And then lastly, the Pablove Foundation, fighting childhood cancer. They do a lot of really good work as well. So kudos to Wizards using, obviously their own summer promotion streams to do some good work as well there and donate to all these charities. And then next up, Derek, I'll let you take the next one because you put...
Yeah, next up, we've got Exalted Funeral. Now, many of you out there may not know who Exalted Funeral is, but they distribute here in the U.S. A retro clone. A retro clone is a clone of old school tabletop gaming from the 1980s. And one of my favorite old school retro clones is Old School Essentials. And it's really good. I really enjoy it, though a lot of people don't play it. I like to run it when I can. But it's a really enjoyable game. That said, Exalted Funeral this past week did a few things to raise money for the Center for Asian Pacific Women. And what the Center for Asian Pacific American Women is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to the enhancement and enrichment of leadership skills for Asian American and Pacific Islander women through education, networking, and mentorship. They had this free bundle of PDFs that you could either get for free or pay $10 for, all money which went to this fund. And that bundle was filled with so many amazing things. It had items for 5th edition as well as items for OSR community. That's what I really love. That is the quintessential Grognards Doing Good. They acknowledged people love 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but they said, you know what? We've got people out here who like retro clones, so we've got stuff out here for that. And it was really great. And then they did this crazy thing where they had this live actual play of one of the craziest role playing games that came out in the 1980s. It was the Dallas tabletop role playing game, and you could buy a ticket and become a part of that actual play. And when I found out about that, I was like, oh my goodness, these folks have a tremendous sense of humor, a sense of weirdness, a sense of craziness, which of course made me love them even more, Than.
Yeah, yeah. And, when you threw this on there, I was like, oh, let me go see what's in there. And I just started looking down through there. And they've got a lot of different like indie hacks for other systems. So there's one on there. There's a couple on there that are like hacks for Mothership. If you don't know what Mothership is, we're going to talk about it later in the show. It's a neat little indie game. But they also have, like you said, they've got OSR. They've got Old School Essentials. They've got some 5e stuff. They've got their own little indie books. It's really cool. Go check them out. Next up, Founders and Legends is this weekend. Our friend Luke Gygax has pulled together some luminaries of current and past D&D notable people, and they are going to be supporting Extra Life. The schedule is up. You can go find that on Founders and Legends or Luke Gygax's own social media accounts. But there's some really neat panels that are going to be on there. Derek and I were talking about it just before the show. Yeah. Luke's mom is going to be
Gygax Walker. If you have never been to Founders and Legends, you need to go this year, because that is unique. Gary Gygax's first wife is not known for doing these, and so it's going to be special. Yeah. It's going to be special.
Yeah. And if you've ever seen any of the past Gary Con material, the Pirate Queen, that was her, right?
Yes.
Yep.
In fact, can I give a little story about the Pirate Queen?
Sure, why not?
It's both a really cool and sad story. The reason she was called the Pirate Queen is because that was what the author Fritz Leiber, or Lieber, I never know how to pronounce his name, but he came up with the characters Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, the world of Langmore.
Yep.
And he was good friends with Gary, and he referred to Mary as the Pirate Queen. Well, when I was hanging out with Gary's oldest son, Ernie, a number of years ago, Ernie showed me a miniature, which actually more along the lines of a figurine, was probably 3 or 4 inches high, of the Pirate Queen that was commissioned and made for her. And it was beautiful. That's the great part of the story. The sad part is when Ernie's apartment had a fire a number of years ago, it was lost. So you can come see the Pirate Queen, or as our friend the Antipodian D20 said, which is Heath from Down Under. Glad to have you, Heath.
It's good to see you, Heath.
Poor guy shared a room with me at GaryCon one year, which is always a horrible experience for people who want to hear a preacher stay up late and talk theology and gaming. But yeah, tune in and you'll get to see the Pirate Queen.
Yep.
And, but I'm sorry, Than. I just jumped in there and ran all over you. But
no, you're good. No, that's awesome. Going. That's what we do, right? We go off on tangents. We're old farts, right?
Yeah, that we are.
So next up, not sure what's up with that logo. You want to cover this one as well? This is the pop-up.
Yeah, pop-up Gen Con. There is a lot going on in our community to make sure that in a world where the pandemic is still very real, that is still very much happening, and large crowds and large gatherings are not encouraged. Gen Con, as many of you know, it is the largest tabletop gaming convention in the country. And this year they're limiting access, limiting hotel blocks, but they're doing pop-up Gen Cons at, I forget the term for it, but at game stores
Yeah.
and around the country where they can have a pop-up Gen Con. And that was really great. That was really great to see them doing that so that more and more people could have a little bit of the Gen Con experience. I believe stores are going to have some swag to give away, things like that. Yeah, I'm just excited about that. Gary Con is also doing something along similar lines in that in years past they had the Gary Camp for those who could not make it to Gary Con. And during the pandemic, Gary Con transitioned to Gary Con Online, which was awesome and amazing. And so I was very happy to see that and to be a part of that. Well, what they're doing this year at Gary Con is they are going to continue Gary Con Online as well as Gary Con on site, and there will be streaming events. This, to me, is again one of the great things about Grognards Doing Good. They are wanting to make sure these gaming conventions are as accessible to as many people as possible. And I think that is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the neat things about GaryCon is that it is in Lake Geneva, and it is, you know, it's in the Lake Geneva Resort. It's and that's sort of its home, right? And I don't think anybody really wants to see it leave there, but there comes a time when GaryCon's going to get a little too big. This gives people that access when they can't make it because those tickets sell out pretty fast, and that's really cool. It allows you to still be part of it, and like Heath said, virtual GaryCon, I've had a blast with it. You know, the Ethereal Con this year, I ran, you know, as many games during that as I did at a normal GaryCon, and it's a lot of fun. And yep. Heath gets to take the Aussie takeover of the Twitch channel, and keep it going 24/7 around the globe. And that's you can't do that when it's just the physical spot. And then next up, or I guess lastly on our list this month, or this week, we are still supporting the Pickle Dragon accessibility sale and the Pickle Dragon GoFundMe. Matt Rauscher, you've seen us talk about him on previous episodes. He is, was paralyzed from the chest down, and is needing to get into a better situation with the home, something that's more accessible, something that fits his needs now. And you can still go, I believe, through the end of July, go pick up some fantastic miniatures over at Adventures in 3D. Their URL is there. It's their Etsy store. Use the code GETPICKLED to get 20% off any of your order, and all proceeds from that go directly to Matt's GoFundMe in support. You can also just go donate directly to the GoFundMe as well. And I was hoping to have my Tarrasque in this week. So I ordered a full-scale Tarrasque from them in support of this. It was supposed to be here this morning, and it got delayed in the mail, and I'm ticked because now that's not on what's new on my shelf, but maybe next week. But we'll get to show that off and let you guys see what we're talking about with this, what the quality is like. I'm looking forward to it. It looks awesome.
I want to pet it. I want to pet you.
Yes, come over. We can pet the Tarrasque. So that's it for Grognards Doing Good this week. Like I said, lots of great work going on out there. Please support all of these great charities, whether it's through watching the streams, donating, or just hopping on and doing some good out there.
Yeah.
And then...
Yes, and with that said...
Yes.
Are you a good grognard? If you're a good grognard and you're out there listening, and you have stories of good grognarding. I think I just invented a
I
word.
think you did too. You just
If you haven't, hey man, that's it. We're
grognarding.
always
That's
making
it.
up words. So if you've got a story of good grognarding out there, Than and I, we searched the internet archives. We delved into our emails. I'm starting to get people showing interest on TikTok about sharing good grognard stories. If you know of a charity fundraiser, send that to us. Hit the like button, share it, go to our website, go to any of these links, put it here in the stream, either now or later. We'll get that notification. We want to know stories about good grognards. And it doesn't have to be a charity fundraiser. Are you doing something for your community? Are you teaching young kids how to play RPGs?
Yeah.
Are you doing something at the local school, at your local church? Are you running game days for people? Are you involved with groups like Meeple Mountain and you know about that and you want us to share that on the broadcast? Let us know
Yeah.
and we will look into it. I'm not going to tell you we're going to include them all because, like this week, we had a huge amount. But if it's something that's coming up, please let us know.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you let us know in advance, a week or two, we can promote it and you can promote it. And that's the idea. We want to increase the bandwidth. For
Yeah.
too long, grognards like us have been said that we're gatekeepers. We've been accused of that, and sometimes, sadly, rightfully so. But we're here to show that there are some grognards out there that are throwing the doors open wide and welcoming everybody at the table and doing good in the world.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, let's turn over to our first topic of the night. So, you may have seen on social media, we put out this topic looking for some folks that gave us some good ideas and some recommendations. And this is something that actually came out of, I think it was a bit of our conversation on last week's show. And then also it continued at Derek's birthday bash this past weekend.
Which Than ran an awesome game of D&D for us. In the world of Greyhawk. That was a blast. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to doing the next one. But the question came up, what do you do when D&D does not meet your TTRPG needs? Now, this is a topic that I've seen starting to kind of float around the internet in a couple of different places. And, the first thing here is, obviously, we're not knocking D&D. We both grew up on D&D. We both like D&D. It's my default game. If I'm going to run something, I'm probably going to run D&D. But that being said, there's a lot of new folks to the RPG hobby, and they've only known D&D. And sometimes D&D just does not quite meet what you need for the story you're trying to tell. You can try to shoehorn it in there. You can try to homebrew it, and we're going to talk about that. I've got some ideas about doing some homebrew discussions. But tonight, we're going to talk about how can you maybe look at something different, and why would you look at something different? I think that's the first topic here is why would you go with something besides D&D, specifically 5th edition. I think that's because that's sort of the most ubiquitous one at this point. But I can think of a few reasons. But Derek, what are your thoughts? Why would you go to something besides 5th edition?
Well, I will say 5th edition recently with the release of Ravenloft has put in that horror element. But if you want to run something other than D&D, it could be space fantasy, space opera.
Yep.
D&D doesn't work well for that. It doesn't work well for the hard science fiction style games. For horror that is not combat related, D&D doesn't work well for that. And for some people, they just want something that they can throw together in a few minutes with some quick, fast, easy rules.
Yeah.
D&D does take prep. I know that Than spends a ton more time prepping his games than I do, But even when I'm prepping my games, I put more time into prepping a D&D game than I do into a sermon. Because a sermon, hopefully, at least when I'm preaching, my congregation doesn't want me to preach more than 15 minutes. A D&D session can last anywhere from 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of prep. So say you don't have a lot of time. Say that you're short on time, or you just want a quick role-playing game. You need to find another option.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of other options out there, but those are the main reasons that I have. What are your reasons, Stan?
Well, so first off, I like Wayfort Woodwork's comment. The reason why you would switch to something besides D&D is because you want your party to die faster. That's pretty good. So I think you kind of hit, sort of the major points there. Theme, I think, is the main one. You can, and this is my word. My wife recently got onto me for using this word because she didn't think it was a real word. But you can kludge any theme into D&D on top of the D20 system. But is that going to meet all of your needs using D20? It might not. I think that there are certain cases where there are rule systems that are better suited for the theme that you are looking to do. We're going to talk about a few of these here in a little bit, but just a couple that come to mind. If you want to do, like you said, non-combat horror, the one that we both know, Call of Cthulhu, that's a great one for that. There's so many skill checks and social skills, and the insanity, dread, horror is much more prevalent there than even what you get with what was introduced in Ravenloft and Domains of Dread. But if you want to do, say, like a modern firefight type game where there's lots of guns and lots of explosions, I'm not sure D20 is really gonna fit that. You might want to look at something like, say, maybe Cyberpunk, that specifically has the Friday Night Firefight rules.
Or you have to go back to 3.5.
3.5 can do it a little bit better.
Well, they had the D20 Modern.
They had D20 Modern. They had Spycraft, which we'll talk about those here in a minute as well. Like, there are other options, and those are just going to suit you better. And then, yeah, like you said, the prep work, that's the other thing. The complexity. So last night, I didn't even tell you about this, Derek. So last night, I got together with some of the folks over at Meeple Mountain. If you don't know what Meeple Mountain is, go check it out, especially if you're into board games, at meeplemountain.com. It is a review site for all types of tabletop gaming that I write for. They're based out of here in Nashville, where Derek and I are. But I got together with a couple of guys from Meeple Mountain to playtest the upcoming Avatar: The Last Airbender role-playing game.
Ooh.
Yes. And that is based on a system that I know you're familiar with. It's based on Powered by the Apocalypse, which is Monster of the Week is based on that. And there was hardly any prep work needed for that. It's so quick to just jump in and do that and to tell this interesting story. And we had combat, but at the same time, we were able to work that Avatar flavor in. There were funny moments. There were serious moments. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time with it.
You pulled out those 2d6s, right?
You pulled out the 2d6s. And that's the thing is, like, that's so simple, right? You can teach someone... I personally can teach someone 5th edition pretty quickly. The ramp is much smaller on 5th edition than it has been on other editions. But with something like Powered by the Apocalypse, where it's just 2 6-sided dice that they're more than likely, if they've never played a role-playing game before, they've probably at least played Monopoly. And so they're going to be familiar with just rolling dice to do something, right? Heath is heading out. Thank you so much, sir. Really
Thanks
appreciate
for
you
joining
stopping
us,
by. Always love seeing you.
Hey, and welcome, Rudolph. Good to have you back with us, Rudolph.
Yes.
Woohoo!
So I think that's the other component to it, right? Is your complexity. Now you could go the other way. And I think this is maybe what Wayfork was talking about. If you want your party to die faster, we can go the other direction. Rather than saying, I want something that's a little bit simpler, I want something that's a little more crunchy. I want to go old school. I want something that feels like I'm running, second edition again. And so we're going to talk about that as well. We've got our folks from Troll Lord here. We're going to talk about maybe something that they put out that we can talk about as well. But there's a lot of different reasons why you should think about it. I know that Derek, you've had some conversations on TikTok the past couple of days about like forever D&Ders who are like, I don't need anything but D&D.
Well, what's been weird about those conversations is it's the younger players who are saying that.
Yeah.
And so when I see, 20-somethings and 30-somethings saying, they don't want to have to learn another rule set, I understand that.
Sure.
Heck, any of us who went from first edition to second edition to third edition to fourth edition to fifth edition, we do get tired of learning new rules. And I understand that frustration.
Yeah.
That said, for our generation, there was not the plethora of role-playing games that there are today. And so one of the great things about tabletop role-playing today is there is something out there for everyone. I mean, I just found out Big Eyes, Small Mouth came out with another edition.
Yeah.
A newer edition. And so if you like anime style and anime flavor, something I occasionally enjoy, it's not always my cup of tea, but I love to watch anime.
Yeah.
So the idea of occasionally playing an anime style role-playing game, Big Eye, Small Mouth is perfect for that.
Yeah.
And so that is the biggest thing. If you're like most geeks and nerds and freaks and tabletoppers that I know, you like a wide variety of things. And so there are different games out there and different settings depending on the flavor of gaming you want.
Rudolph says, I remember when they gave the wizards subclasses like enchanters and diviners, threw my book across the room because I'd have to learn new magic rules. I mean,
That's right.
That is part of this hobby, right? Yeah. So even those like forever D&Ders, the longer they stay with D&D, there's going to be new rules included, and they're going to homebrew.
Like when my DM threw Tasha's Cauldron at us.
Yeah, or Acquisitions Incorporated, and suddenly you're running your own business, right?
Yes. I needed a spreadsheet for that.
I think we gave one of our players who's a project manager some type of PTSD because suddenly he was thinking we needed like scrum meetings and things like that.
Yeah, he was wondering what the magical equivalent of Slack was.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of, this is probably a good segue to move into the What's New on Your Shelf segment, because I have something new on my shelf that is another type of this where I'm anxious to introduce some new rules that came out this week to a game. If you, I am always willing to let you go first, sir. If you have yours at hand, and I'll tee mine up. You want me to go first tonight?
I want you to go first tonight.
All right. So, what I am pretty excited about this week is, let me get it pulled up here on our screen. There we go. I am excited about the fact, that's kind of small, but let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger here. Yeah. There we go. Let's push that guy back so you guys can see all of us together. Yep. So, Kingdoms and Warfare from Matt Colville's MCDM Productions came out yesterday. This is the second book put out by MCDM. If you don't know who MCDM is, go look up Matt Colville. He has a long-running YouTube series called Running the Game, and it teaches people how to be a DM. Some of the best DM tips I have ever seen came from this series. The guy is super smart. He's a writer. He's a game designer. And his first book, Strongholds and Followers, is something that I have implemented various pieces of in my games over the years. Kingdoms and Warfare was due out last year, but obviously due to the pandemic, there was some delays on that. And the PDF for it is finally out. Hoping to get the books out in the next few months, just because the shipping apocalypse that may take a little bit longer. But so let me back up. What Strongholds and Followers did was, actually, let me step back one bit further. If you were an old school D&D'er and you remember things like having those hirelings that follow you around in the dungeon or follow you into battle to carry your gear for you or to go do the one thing they're good at, if you remember getting to those high levels and getting your keep, and then suddenly you're the lord of a domain, that's what Strongholds and Followers does. It adds that into 5th edition, gives you just the right amount of crunch to cover those things, while at the same time being pretty dynamic and not bog the game down too much. So go check that one out. This is the next iteration. So this is what happens when your keep becomes a full-scale domain and you are now running an organization. And so the kingdoms portion of this, that could be your domain. You could be running a kingdom. You could be running a duchy or something like that. Your organization could also be things like thieves guilds or arcane orders or a temple or an order of knights. And they give you these really great organization dynamics that your group can work together on, get benefits from, and then carry out intrigues against enemy domains. So now your organization is carrying out espionage and diplomacy and subterfuge, all building up to a confrontation with your enemy domain, your villain organization, and that eventually leads into warfare. And what warfare is a 5th edition compatible mass combat system. So we're talking units, we're talking commanders. It's elegant. I haven't dug deep into it, but I've been following Matt as he's been developing it on his Twitch streams and on his YouTube videos. And from what I hear, it's pretty slick. So I'm looking forward to finding a way to implement that in a game. I definitely want to do the domains at some point, just because we've already delved with our home campaign. We've done the adventuring organization kind of a thing already. I'd like to kind of tweak it a little bit, maybe see where we can go from there. But then, I don't know, maybe at some point we just get into a massive epic scale battle. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty excited about this one. Everything that's come out of MCDM has been top quality. The art production on this book is amazing. The cover is beautiful, but all of the interior pages look like illuminated manuscripts. It's a pretty book on top of being a pretty awesome book. So that's mine for what's new on my shelf this week. What have you got?
Well, what's new on my shelf, and I hope that I can do this right. I've got my other camera set up here, so let's see how this works.
Okay.
There you go. This is the Starship Warden. It is put out by Troll Lord Games, written by James Ward, who gave us Gamma World and Metamorphosis Alpha. This book is a wonder-filled page turner. I mean, it's got some tremendous artwork in here. And if you are not familiar with this material, you are missing out. Because what Starship Warden is all about, let me unhook this real quick.
Yep.
All right. So, what the Starship Warden is all about is it is a giant colony ship that has been launched into space, and something horrible went wrong. They don't know what it is. That is open to interpretation for the game master. And so there are areas on this giant colony ship. There's everything you want. You can have high technology areas, low medieval areas. You can have people who live on the ship and they think they're on a planet. They don't know they're traveling through space. And James Ward put this together many years ago,
Yeah.
and now it's out for publication. It is a huge tome of. I know there's over 600 pages in this book, and there's just room for all types of adventuring in here. And the great thing that Troll Lord Games did with this is you can run it with old school settings like Gamma World or Metamorphosis Alpha if you'd like. You could use those old rule sets, or you could use the Troll Lord's Amazing Adventures engine. So it is system somewhat agnostic. I think you could even use it with D&D 5e if you wanted to, because I know on the old versions of the Starship Warden, one of the things they did is they would have AD&D characters teleported or magically portaled onto the starship.
Yep.
Luke Gygax himself has adventured on the Starship Warden. And what I love about it is the idea that you could have a character that doesn't know they are on a spaceship.
Yeah.
Meet up with someone who now has a laser rifle pointed at you. And so you can do all kinds of fun things on that. I mean, it is so wide, it's so open to interpretation, and it is a great blend of what old school can do when it meets new school. And I just love it. And they have just fulfilled all of their Kickstarters. All of their Kickstarters have gone out. And once they got all the Kickstarters out, they now have some left and behind now. They've got extras like Kickstarter's meant to do, and you can go to Troll Lord Games and buy you a copy if you're interested.
I'm gonna have to get me a copy. I was looking at it today online, their announcements and everything, and I'm kind of jealous you've got a copy. I should have. I need to come back over and flip through it.
Oh, definitely, anytime. And you know, the version I got, I didn't get all the extras, but the version I got came with the Starship Warden the Goya, which is an adventure.
Yeah.
So they already have some adventures for it.
Awesome.
Here's another adventure called Saving Ren. It also has deck expansions on it. I mean, you could. Here's the cool thing too. One of the things you can do is if you're already running some type of sci-fi game,
yeah,
is you could have your ship come across the Starship Warden,
right,
and enter into one of its ports. You can duplicate magical abilities through radiation leaking and then have your fantasy people. It's a great way if you've ever wanted to blend fantasy and science fiction. It's great. And then if a Spelljammer ship happens to show up, well, then everything's going to go crazy.
Awesome. I love it. All right. So, what do you guys have on your shelves that's new? Leave us a comment. Tell us what you're giddy about getting, and we'll look through those as well. Maybe you give us some ideas for things we need to go put on our shelves also. Second up, or second topic for the night. So, in continuation of what do you do when D&D does not meet your TTRPGs, we thought it would be a good, fun kind of thought exercise to go through all of the major genres and say, here's a game that you might want to look at instead. And talk about why. Talk about what those games are and what some of the strengths and weaknesses are there. And so, first off, to kick things off, I think before we even get into the specific genres, I think that it might be a good idea to talk about maybe some of the generic systems that are out there, or at least semi-generic systems in a couple of cases, because while the D20 system, can be used for a lot of different things, again, maybe you want to look at one of these other generic systems instead. So the first one is GURPS. GURPS stands for, correct me here, Derek, in case I get it all wrong, Generic Universal Role Playing System.
That's it.
And this is by Steve Jackson Games. It's been around for, forever. As long as I've been in gaming, it's been around. It really is what it says. It's a generic universal system for role playing. Yep. You buy your core GURPS rules, and then whatever flavor you want to add on, they've got books that you can add into that, and then it just kind of works towards that. You can mix and match. You can do a lot of different things. GURPS is really great for if you just need if you've got an idea for something, but you don't exactly know the best way to go about framing it with a rule system. GURPS definitely fills that need. That's one you should check out as well. We talked about Powered by the Apocalypse earlier. So Powered by the Apocalypse, if folks don't know what that is, this started off, GURPS, some really creative stuff there. Powered by the Apocalypse started out as an actual role-playing game called Apocalypse World. It's been around for several years. I think the first version of it, was like 2013, something like that. So it's been around for a little bit. But it's a real lightweight rule system that has just enough complexity to allow for a little bit more of a campaign than some of the other lightweight systems that are almost one-shot type systems. There have since then been a lot of RPGs that use the same rule system that Apocalypse World did because it was so elegant, for lack of a better word. And so you can now go find, Apocalypse World, but you can also, alongside that, find a whole listing of Powered by the Apocalypse titles that the publishers of Apocalypse World actually promote and say, we approve that these games use our system. Oh, nice. Vic Danger says, just picked up from Exalted Funeral, the Everything Bundle of the Thousand Island zines. Nice. So there's a lot of different flavors on this, using those rule systems.
There's another generic system that you may not know about. A lot of people hear Chaosium mentioned, and they think Call of Cthulhu. But Chaosium has their own generic system called the BRP system, or the basic role-playing system.
Mm-hmm.
And the BRP system allows you to play the everyman. You could do a pulp feel or whatever. It's a system where you could have magic in it. But if you wanted to run a straight-up 1950s gangster system, if you wanted to, 1950s gangsters, like the movie, what was it, Casino, or something like that. If you wanted to run a mob-based system, I think it would be perfect for it, from the 1930s or the Prohibition era, or the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, or you wanted to run a detective or a gumshoe style game. The BRP system works really well for that, and Chaosium offers a quick intro to that free PDF on their website.
Nice. That's awesome. A couple of also just a real quick note. I realized I didn't actually name a couple of the titles on the Powered by the Apocalypse. So Derek plays in a Monster of the Week game, which is, I think, pretty much self-explanatory by the title. It is Monsters of the Week.
I played a Monster of the Week game set in an alternate Victorian London with a bunch of clergy.
Yep.
And that is the weirdest game you could be in. And if you ever, it is called Clerical Errors. and they spelled it wrong on purpose.
Lovely.
And they told me to get on there and be my uncensored self. So if you want to find a good podcast out there, they podcast it, they stream it on Twitch, look
Yep.
for clerical errors. And yeah, it's Monster of the Week, and it is pretty free form and free floating,
Yeah.
and it's fun. It's fun for a game that I don't want to take too seriously
Yeah.
or get too attached to my character, because you
Yeah.
can die in
Yeah.
that game real easy.
Yeah. Well, and Powered by the Apocalypse in general is pretty free form. Some of the strengths of it are that just by its very nature, with some of the adjectives that get used for conditions, it encourages role playing and storytelling a little bit more. So there's that. So there's that one. Blades in the Dark is another one that, if you haven't checked out, is a really cool game. It is, you are set. It's medieval fantasy, but it's grimdark medieval fantasy, and it's all about you running thieves and blades and thieves and assassins and fences, like criminal underworld types, and it's all about setting up heists and criminal back alley dealings in a medieval fantasy haunted world. So those are some generic systems. I think that with Blades in the Dark and with the Monster of the Week, I think that's a pretty good segue over into the next one, which is horror. And you know more about horror games than I do. I don't run too many horror games, but there is one that I do want to talk about before we get to the others. I actually have a copy of it. I want to show it here. This is called Mothership. If you don't know about Mothership, it is a little zine indie RPG. Some of the material in the Exalted Funeral bundle is supplemental hacks for Mothership. Mothership is sci-fi horror. So think about all of the things that can go horribly wrong on a starship. That's what Mothership is all about. It's percentile based, so it's 2 10-sided dice, and it's very lightweight, but at the same time, it's got some crunchy tables in there.
Oh my goodness!
And the more stuff
tables are crazy.
And the more stuff you add in, the crunchier it gets, which is pretty amazing considering, like I said, it's zine sized, right? So that's a really good one. You can run. You can run things like, it just escaped me. What's the sci-fi horror with the with the spaceship? Event Horizon. Like, you could run stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Or you could.
Cool. That would work well.
It would work really well with that. Or you could run like Alien with it, which there is now an Alien RPG out that is actually really good. So if you wanna go deep into Alien and run xenomorphs and space marines and all of that, go check that one out as well. But Derek, what are some of your favorite horror games?
Well, my default, and I'll run this baby into the ground, of course, is Call of Cthulhu. I love Call of Cthulhu just because it's been around forever, and that appeals to the old Grognard in me. And there's just so much greatness. They've just launched a Kickstarter with classic stuff on it from the 70s and from the 80s, stuff that I never got a hold of, because I always wanted to play Call of Cthulhu as a kid, but I could never. One, I don't think my friends would have played it. Two, I had not read H.P. Lovecraft yet. And three, my family couldn't have afforded me having another addictive hobby. That would have been a big one. But I like Call of Cthulhu. There was something they put out for 3rd edition, which was called OGL Horror, which was Open Gaming License Horror, which is really nice. Sandy Peterson has even put out some Call of Cthulhu stuff for 5th edition.
Yep.
So if you want to integrate Call of Cthulhu into your 5th edition games with some sanity rules, or insanity rules as I like to call them.
Yeah.
Because the whole goal is that you go insane.
Right.
that out there. There are again, we've already mentioned Monster of the Week a few times. Things on the Apocalypse engine. I really enjoy those in horror. Uh, there's another one out that could be considered horror, and I have to make sure I know I'm going to mispronounce it, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here in my own notes here.
Okay.
And
While you're doing that, Rudolph has a comment.
yeah,
The hero system was generic as well.
yeah,
We actually had hero on later on the list to talk about superheroes, but no, that's absolutely right. And here's my copy of hero system. This is completely generic. This is not the straight superhero. This is just the system itself. Now I did get some. I don't know if you guys can see, but I did get some comic art in there. That's Mike Mignola doing a Hellboy there. This is another great system that super crunchy. If you're into that, if you like some crunch in your system, then Rudolph says if that was printed 91 or 92, my name is Inside Under the Staff. No, this is fifth. This is the fifth edition. I think this came out in 90 or 2000. Yeah, 2002. That's what I thought. Yeah. But still, I do love this system. It's another one of those that I don't get to the table nearly enough because the folks that I play with these days are not interested in that level of depth. Unfortunately, not knocking any of my players. I love all my players, but this is next level for sure. But yes, hero definitely makes the list. So what was the one you were looking up?
the one I'm looking at, and again, it is spelled Baesen, and I'm just going to pronounce it Basin
Okay.
or Basin, and it is Nordic horror role playing. That's right, Nordic horror role playing. It is about the Northern Europe. It's about Northern Europe in the 19th century, but not like we know it. It's a place where myths are alive and myths are real. And it is, it was made based on the work of a Swedish illustrator and author.
Oh.
And it uses the Year Zero engine,
Okay.
and it looks really great. I've read wonderful reviews on it. I have a copy on my shelf, but I didn't want to get up to go look at it. I found out about it from Alex Kammer of Gamehole, and Alex recommended it highly. And when Alex Kammer recommends a game, I have to at least give it a cursory look. And looks really good. The Year Zero engine, from what I understand, it is adaptable to different uh, in different play styles.
Yeah.
So if you like action and adventure, you can do that. If you're more story focused, you can do that. I like flexibility like that in
Yep.
my games. So yeah, so that is probably one of the newer, and I may give a more in-depth review of it in what's new on my shelf because it hasn't been there that long, and it's a really good example of horror role playing if you like horror role playing. And again, horror role playing is an acquired taste. Some people don't like it. My focus, of course, is more on the pulpy side a lot of times. That's one of the reasons I love Pulp Cthulhu, which is great. Your characters are less likely to die in Pulp Cthulhu, but more likely to go insane.
Right. Right. And then I think lastly on this one, I didn't really know where to put this one. I think it fits into a couple of different genres, but kids on bikes. This can be, this can be straight up a Stranger Things role playing game. This can be a Goonies role playing game. This can be a Never Ending Story role playing game. But it's all about kids on bikes in the '80s doing all the things that they tell us that kids on kids did in the '80s on their bikes, because boy, I sure went looking for pirate treasure when I was a kid, right?
I went looking for gold pots at the end of rainbows.
There you go.
That was me.
Yeah. So that's another one to check out as well. It's a fun system. It doesn't take a lot to learn either. All right, so moving on, space opera. So you kind of covered one there already with your what's doing my shelf. That that Starship Warden can be, I think, could be space opera.
It could fit into space opera like that. It could all. That's the nice thing about Starship Warden. If you want to do space opera, you could do that, or you could give it more of a traveler bit.
Yes.
If you wanted to do more traveler style, and I love Traveler because while I never got to play it, it was the Traveler role playing game that got me back into tabletop RPGs because I saw a copy of it. I was grown by that time, so I had adult money, and I picked up a copy of Traveler, and I loved it. And then I found out that you could die during character creation. Yeah, there's that about Traveler.
But tell people what Traveler is, for those that don't know what Traveler is.
Traveler was made by Mark Miller. It is the first sci-fi role-playing game. It has gone through many versions throughout the years. It had its own rule set, and then in the height of the D20 3rd edition time, they even came out with T20. Mm-hmm. Not a great rule set, but it had its pros and cons.
Yeah.
But Traveler was meant to be your gritty sci-fi.
Yeah.
It would have been, I'm trying to think of a comparison. It would have been like Battlestar Galactica of the 70s.
Yeah.
It was about being realistic.
Yep.
It's like if we lived in this modern world and this sci-fi stuff, we had the technology.
Yeah.
It's more Asimovian. So you could do Asimov settings. Everybody who wanted really hard science fiction.
Yes.
And I talk about those types of things in the documentary, The Science Fiction Makers.
Hey.
See that? Boom, boom, boom.
Look at that.
So,
shameless plug.
There you go. Shameless plug for The Science Fiction Makers, which is available to stream for free on Tubi TV. So if you'd like to see The Science Fiction Makers. But Traveler falls into the hard science fiction.
It does.
Whereas Stan, I know, is going to talk about this because he loves West End Games Star Wars, and I'm going to let him talk about that.
Yes.
That would be more space opera, space fantasy.
It is.
So tell us why you love West End Games Star Wars then.
So to me, this was I grew up on two things as a child of the 80s. I grew up on all of those 80s fantasy movies. Labyrinth, Willow, Lady Hawk, Dragon Slayer, Excalibur,
preach
all of those, right?
Hallelujah.
That was one half, and then the other half of my brain was Star Wars. And so when I found out there was a Star Wars role-playing game, boy, I dug into that one. The West End D6 system also is just from an RPG historian perspective is a fascinating system. It wasn't the first. Technically, their Ghostbusters system was the first to do this. But
that's a fun system.
But it's basically the same system. It's D6 dice pools, and we didn't have anything like that at the time. That introduced that idea, and then you have that bleed over into things like Shadowrun, which we'll talk about later. But you could really the West End Star Wars system came out, or at least hit its prime, after Return of the Jedi came out. Right. And in that time period when George Lucas said, we're taking a break. We're not doing any more Star Wars. And Star Wars fans were just desperate to have something Star Wars. It filled that niche. And what was really great about the West End system is because Lucasfilm wasn't doing anything with the IP, they basically gave West End and their writers kind of carte blanche to write whatever they wanted to.
Yeah.
And so when they were like, oh, well, it's been a while since we did anything with this. We probably should refresh it again, see if there's interest. George is starting to think about doing prequels. Let's see if there's still interest out there. They put out novels, right? The Timothy Zahn novels. And what did Timothy Zahn do? He got a whole bunch of West End source books and started looking at them and using things out of those in his novels. So basically, West End ended up writing a lot of the, at least for a long time, canon for Star Wars. And that's like coming out of a role-playing game. That's crazy. So I like it for that. To me, it feels the most like Star Wars. There have been other Star Wars RPGs. There was the D20 RPG. It was fine, but it felt like you were playing Star Wars flavored D&D. And there's now the new Fantasy Flight system, which is really good. It has a lot of strengths to it as well. The Edge of Empire system, it is good. But I just have a soft spot for this one. And if you show up at GaryCon, you'll probably find me running a game of this. It's not a fast system. I will admit that. You get bogged down in the combat turns very quickly because you can basically do as many things as you want to within penalties applying. But it just feels like Star Wars. So that's the one I like. I think other things we had on our one other thing we had on our list that we can't not mention is Star Frontiers.
Yeah. Star Frontiers was TSR's shot across the bow at Traveler.
Yeah.
But it was also a mixture of it was more space fantasy in some ways than Traveler was.
Yep.
You had a lot of strange alien races in it. You had the beautiful Larry Elmore artwork. We try and stay positive on this show. I've had a copy of Star Frontiers, and I wasn't able to get it when I was a kid, so I got it as an adult. And I looked through it, I read through it, and while the source material is really good and fun to draw stuff from, and I would be willing to do so, I don't recommend trying to use the rules from the 80s because they are clunky.
Yeah.
They are very clunky rule system.
Yeah.
That said, the source material's fun.
Yeah.
And if you're like me and that's your bag, if you like a kind of a space fantasy with cool, strange, weird alien creatures roaming around, I think that would be really good.
Yeah.
Of course, there's but there are other systems you could do that with.
Yeah.
But if you really wanted something old school to draw some inspiration from, I think that's the hidden gem inside Star Frontiers.
Yeah.
It has great inspirational material. And then if you just want to sit back and go, at the Larry Elmore art, well, then you can do that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not the most smooth system, but it's another one of those that if you're interested in it, it's worth playing once to say, all right, I've played Star Frontiers, because it was TSR's attempt at doing sci-fi, and it like you said, the setting is good, the art is good, just the rules need a little bit of a tweak, but still, if you're interested, check it out. Let's move down the sci-fi list. So Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is making a return with
Thank you, Keanu Reeves.
Thank you, Keanu Reeves. We love you. You're amazing.
You are the best man out there in the world. And if you ever watch this, Keanu, I'll shoot you my telephone number. We could hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, because of that, the go-to here obviously is going to be pretty much any iteration of Cyberpunk. The latest one that just came out, Cyberpunk Red, is a great system. Let's see. This is the Jumpstart kit for it. So this is sort of like the beginner's box set. Comes with some pretty dice and a couple of short pre-made adventures. You can get into the game pretty quickly with it. But if you want to go, old school Cyberpunk 2020, it was a long running system. Mike Pondsmith did amazing work with it. Still doing amazing work with it. That is a man that eats, breathes, and lives Cyberpunk, and he is the master at it.
And John Johnson will run some amazing Cyberpunk at GaryCon if you can get in his game.
You got it, but they go fast.
They go fast. And I got to play in one of John's games one year, and John is just excellent at running that Cyberpunk.
Yep.
It was my first ever Cyberpunk game because I'd never been able to play in Cyberpunk. And John Johnson just does an excellent job of running it. He lives and breathes Cyberpunk and takes his Cyberpunk games seriously.
And then I think the other big one is Shadowrun. So if you like Cyberpunk, but you also like your D&D fantasy, this is the ultimate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter type situation.
Yeah. I'm a big Reese's guy.
So exactly. I do too. I do too. It's gone through a lot of different versions. I think the latest version is fixes some things, but maybe doesn't make everything. Yeah,
they had some editing problems in that too. The book was really clunky,
hard to find things in it.
The box set's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
but the book itself, the core book, if they errata that baby and republish it, sure.
Yeah,
but it's hard to wade through.
Yeah,
it's hard to wade through.
Yeah, but there's plenty of editions. I think the one before that a lot of people liked, and it's kept up with, just like Cyberpunk has done. Obviously, Cyberpunk 2020, we hit that last year, so they had to do we had to update a little bit. So the technology inside Cyberpunk 2020 changed in Cyberpunk Red. The technology in Shadowrun has changed over the years, so we're not using dial-up modems anymore. It's all now much more wireless. You now have Wi-Fi, wireless shadow runners or net runners. But it's those are the two big ones. If you're looking to run Cyberpunk, check those out. There is another. Getting back to Powered by the Apocalypse and the Apocalypse engine, there's one called what's it called? It'll come to me in a second. But there's actually two. There's one that's about like doing like the cyberspace piece of it, and there's one that's about doing the grim gritty cyberpunk piece as well. You can find those on the Apocalypse engine or website. But yeah. Go look for those as well. There's a couple of smaller, lighter ones if you don't want to get into the deep stuff. Post-apocalypse. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at how much stuff we've got left then, and we are already at over an hour.
We are.
So, do you think we ought to break this up into a second episode? Because I know I could go on about post-apocalyptic role-playing games like crazy, because post-apocalyptic is my jam, and there is so much old school and new school stuff out there. Cool. We've got superheroes that I know you are a big superheroes person.
I've got a few thoughts there.
You could, believe me, you could go on and on about superheroes. Spies and espionage wouldn't take too long, but I think we need to pull out some other games for that. I should have added more. I think we could probably break this up into 2 episodes if you wanted to, so that we could, I think we could do that.
Let's ask the audience. We've still got quite a few in our chat here.
Yeah, 12 of you guys on here.
Anybody of the ones we've talked about so far? Have we missed any? That you guys think we need to talk about? And do you want to hear us, go a little bit longer on some of these?
Yeah.
give us some thoughts. Any
Yeah, give us some feedback. There's 12 of you folks out there, or maybe 11 because I'm one of them. But yeah, is there something else you want us to pull out? Do you guys have ideas for topics? Are there as Stan said, are there game systems that we've missed? Because there's so many out there, and this could be anything from the 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
up to current games. But if there's something you want to hear us talking about, please let us know. And Rudolfo, I did not know that you were on the staff of Hero System. That's pretty cool to know. Did you see that comment?
I did see that.
Yeah.
I wish the version that I had was the one that had his name in it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And I keep calling him Rudolfo. It's Rudolph.
Rudolph Movo. But yeah, Rudolph says, yeah, maybe 2 episodes is a good idea. Well, I think we could do that. So our list for next time is post-apocalyptic, superheroes, spies and espionage, Western, and then also we do want to wrap up with fantasy. And just give you some other options for fantasy as well, because there are other ones out there, and talk about why. That's a question that I love to ask folks. Why play a fantasy system that's not D&D? Because there are some really good reasons. So I think we could cover all of that. Rudolph says, Becca was produced by ICE in the early 90s. I think they sold it in mid 90s. I think you're right. That's right. Rudolph, you worked also on MERPs, right? Is that right? I think I remember that from one of our previous streams.
Yeah, I believe it was Rudolph who. I don't know if Rudolph worked on MERPs, but Rudolph did ask us if we were going to talk about MERPs.
Yep, MERPs, Shadow World, Hero, and Champions. Oh, I love Champions too. Yeah.
Nice,
yeah. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's break it up, and we'll cover that for 2.
So now we don't have to brainstorm too hard this week. That makes it easier.
But that means that you guys have an extra week to send us topics. So think about what you want to hear us talk about. And yeah, if there's any that we missed, let us know. We'd love to talk about them. And go in depth on some of these at some point.
Yeah.
Well,
so Than, I want to throw something out here that you and I have been talking about privately, and our viewers, even though we don't have a lot of viewers here, Than and I have been talking about doing a couple of actual play episodes with a group of our friends, and we're planning on trying to set that up. We don't know when we're going to launch that, but we would like to know your thoughts about watching an actual play episode.
Yeah.
We're thinking about to see us in an actual play. If that's something you might be interested in, let us know and throw in ideas of the types of actual play you would like to see. This could be everything from standard fantasy role-playing games to space fantasy, whatever. We want to hear your ideas. We want to hear your ideas.
Yep, absolutely. And also, I'll just take a moment to plug our Instagram. We're sitting at around 76 followers.
Nice.
If we can break 100, I might break some merch out. So
Rudolph's reading our minds.
Sounds good. Maybe a series of one shots over different systems.
Rudolph, get out of my head. Get out of Than's head. We can't have 3 in this one brain we share, okay? All right, get out of our heads. We've been kind of thinking about
definitely
that.
One we've thought about. Yeah, we've thought about doing different systems. We've thought about doing different D&D campaign settings. We've thought about every which way we can slice this to make something a little bit more unique than just another straight 5th edition stream. Bring you guys something a little special. So there's our thoughts on some of the games that you can go to when D&D doesn't suit your needs. We'll have more next week. Give us some feedback on this. Leave comments on our YouTube. If you're watching this on video on demand, leave comments there. Hit us up on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find all of that at thegoodgrognards.com. And until next week, any final thoughts, Derek?
We love you guys, and may all your hits be crits.
All right. And until next week, be good to each other out there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.